all you want about BPUs if you want to do that, but there's no reason to throw another two variables into the mix when we're already doing things illegally. I just don't see how that's going to work.
I think Larry and I agree.
I wish, well, we've all agreed
but the
on many times.
The method of the correction's been different.
I guess the question is, last time we had Ryan craft the ordinance, it was based on the consensus. And I've watched that video twice now, and I know that everybody here was in agreement. That's exactly what we told him to do. Those are his marching orders.
Different, but I have a different solution.
Not that day, that night, you did
Nope.
not say that. But
Nope.
So I guess the question is, how do we fix it? Now, and your marching orders were given to you by us under the consensus that we had. But how do we fix it any other way? Because you did say that's not the only way to fix it, the problem.
What, by passing the ordinance?
The ordinance that you
was
created.
drafted.
Right, you said there are probably other ways.
I mean, and if you want to do something that is different from what state statute provides, then we need to charter out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to give me direction on where we want to go. If we just want to take 2296 and you want me to...
No,
Okay.
I don't. That's...
Wait,
I don't even think the EUB would be interested.
What did you say? You would take 2296 and what?
If you want me to take 2296 and figure out what we can charter out of and what we can leave in place, then I could do that. I don't know.
That kind of makes sense. I mean, if that's the direction, what do you think, Cheryl? Do you think?
It's an option. It gives you a couple of different options to look at if you want to come back and have this at a work session. You've got all your options on the table.
Yeah.
Up to you.
I don't think there's given the consensus of the council over the last couple of meetings, I think that chartering out is going to be where we go. And the question is, to what extent do we charter out? How do we charter out? And whether or not we want to charter with a new framework in the charter, or whether we want to charter and have a regular ordinance that addresses the framework and can be easily amended in the future. That's what I think is a discussion now. I think that dynamic's been set. I mean, I may not be. Am I correct in that?
I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Go
say
ahead.
this. Without going through exactly what we would charter in or out of, I mean,
Well, I agree.
I guess we've already talked about purchasing policy. We've talked about 3 bids. We've talked about some employee stuff. Those are things that, if they're okay for instance, I'm going to use the purchasing policy.
Sure.
If we think that purchasing policy that the EUB uses is okay for the EUB, then it should be okay for Brian.
I agree.
It should be okay for Jeff. So why would we create a charter ordinance that allows the EUB to operate under a purchasing policy if we're going to review it and allow the whole city to potentially operate under the same policy?
And Chris,
it's like we're doing, I feel
Yeah, I
like
agree
we're
with
doing a
that.
bunch of rework.
No.
Yeah, you agree with
try
that,
and
Steve?
fix, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're working around the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
if
we've already
there's
attacked the
good
problem
things that
correctly.
EUB
We
is
had it
doing-
rewritten by an attorney.
Well, actually,
And that's-
which takes us back to the advisory board, which
Well,
actually was a
that's-
perfectly good fix.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
But
If there are things that we like that the EUB are doing and the flexibility they have, and I think we all can agree that there are those things, I'm not going to go through them now, but then we should be looking at those on a broader scale
I agree.
to address,
So you-
not
Institutionally, not divisionally.
exactly. And that's what I don't I mean, that's what I guess I'm just a little bit
So
frustrated.
you agree that the Chris, you agree that the advisory board is the way to go?
I agree that the advisory board was an expeditious way for us to get legal. And I think that an advisory board, it could be independent or it could be advisory for all 3 utilities, I think is important. And I think that if there was one thing that we learned from my term paper, which actually I didn't write, but if there's something that I learned from my term paper, it's that as much as anything, the study of the issues to make educated decisions was as important as any other piece. And shoot, we've got 4 members of committee that are here in the room, and I think at least a couple or two or three or maybe all of us are in agreement on that. You know, so, yeah, I don't have a problem with it being an advisory board. That is, other people had a problem with it being an advisory board.
But honestly, I mean, if we fix the thing, if we address individually the things as a city that we think gives the EUB the flexibility, there's no, I mean, as long as they can remain just as they are, as long as they're operating within a consistent city policy, right? So if we address those particular, because the big things, budget, easement and right-of-way, we're not going to change those, even with the charter ordinance, right? So those have to change. I mean, those have to change, period. But these smaller things that are kind of a subset of the ordinance, the purchasing policy, some of the employee stuff, you know, those are things that we can, as a city, address from a policy perspective, and the EUB can remain functioning as they are as long as those things are, however we decide to address them, as long as they adhere to them.
And I will agree from the standpoint, there's some things that currently are under EUB's auspices under 2296 that may not necessarily make sense. Integrated Purchasing Authority, if the purchasing policy is modified, and I think I've already made my intentions clear that I want to see that reviewed and revised. If we take that purchasing policy and make it robust enough, I don't see any reason why EUB or any other entity within the city can work with it. Economic development. Right now, there's economic development in 2296. I've spoken with several members of the EUB, and they have told me flat out that, you know, that they're not necessarily interested in taking on the burden of economic development incentives. I think that they'd be glad to have the city assume that and control that. There's personnel policies. I think if we have a good personnel policy, a standard personnel policy with pay for performance, I think that there's members of the UB as well as the electric utility that would not have a problem with personnel policies being conducted and controlled by the city. So there's several things in here that I think that we can make changes to that would then allow, free up, or facilitate EUB or the Board of Electric Utility or Public Utility, whatever you want to call it, you know, after we charter out of the appropriate ordinances, of the appropriate statutes, I should say, to be able to run the entity like a business, and come back to the operational side of things.
And I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Okay.
Okay? But what I'm going to say is that I listened to you there, and I think that what I'm hearing from you is that, you know, if we have a holistic purchasing policy shift on the city level, most of the other stuff that you talked about, you know, if the city makes that kind of shift, most of the other stuff that you talked about actually lend itself to advisory board, and that way we still actually get the independent study that I think that these issues, see, but yeah, that's as soon as I say advisory board, everything you just said lent itself to an argument that says that they can work under an advisory board.
I've never said that. I've never said that, and
I know you haven't.
I think you are inferring something that's not there, Chris.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm telling you what I heard from your comments.
No, I think that from the standpoint of operational decision-making, they still need to have the ability to do that. I think that there's some things that they have to be close to, that having to defer to city government or city council decision-making as a backstop is not necessarily the right thing to do. So from that perspective, I don't think an advisory board is, I think the advisory board solution is counterproductive, and I think we've already discussed that twice in chambers and have had it voted down twice. So,
so Steve, can you give an example of what you think they do operationally that is protected by 2296 right now that would be taken away?
Well, I think from the standpoint of rate making, that's one of the big decisions that has to be that they would have authority over. If we chartered out of the state statute that puts the rate making in the total hands of the governing body and allows the third party entity, i.e. the EUB, to be able to set those rates or be able to establish levels of service within the city limits, that's a big aspect of operational authority and power that